Back in 2008, me and my girlfriend were absolutely skint and lived in a shitty, mediocre flat situated in a rough part of Edinburgh in Scotland. It was part of a large tower built sometime in the 70s and it was fucking disgusting. It was a tasteless eyesore that ravaged the skyline a mile either way, but it was cheap and we needed it. The flat had a tiny ass bathroom, no bigger than a standard toilet cubicle, a mid-sized bedroom that had mould growing up the walls, a tiny living room that didn't even have enough space for a coffee table between the TV and the couch, and oddly, a very large kitchen that hadn't been updated since before I was born. Now, I just want to say, this tower block had well over 100 flats and I swear, I must have asked at least 24 residents if they had anything similar happen to them, and from what I've been told, it was only us. Either we were easy targets, or it was our flat specifically. It didn't start straight away. We had lived there about 5 months before anything noticeable started happening, but when it did, it was pretty crazy. It started off with us either sat in the tiny living room watching telly and hearing bangs from the kitchen, or with us just coming home from work. Both times, we would go into the kitchen to see cupboard doors wide open, the same with the fridge door, and the oven was on. Me and my partner played the blame game against each other as it was happening regularly and we both couldn't seem to explain it, but the more we seemed to argue over it and acknowledge it, the worse it seemed to become. Over the coming months, the activity intensified as we both began to realise we weren't the ones doing it. On 2 occasions, both whilst we were sleeping, the fire alarm would sound. We would go into the kitchen to see a pan filled with boiling water on the hob. The hob was often empty when we went to bed. Naturally, the whole tower had to be evacuated on both occasions and we received a fine from our landlord the second time. All this was before things were thrown. The first time, it nearly killed my bloody girlfriend. A paperweight off my bedside table landed heavily on her chin, bruising it. There was no way it could have slid from the far side of the bedside table, lifted, gone over me, and landed on her chin. This activity began to put a strain on our relationship, and we were unsure of everything and couldn't explain so many things. Things finally came to a head one night in November. We were having a pretty intense argument and were both stood in the kitchen flailing our arms about when, bang, the bulb showered over us, bits of fine powdered glass covering our faces. We both left there and then, that night, returning only once to collect all of our stuff. We crashed at my girlfriend's mum's house until we found another place. I did some research at a library and found out this particular ghost or haunting could be attributed to a poltergeist, something I'd never heard of. I had heard of the Steven Spielberg film with the same name, but had never seen it and never knew what the real thing was. Needless to say, me and my girlfriend, who is now my wife, haven't rented a flat since.
Me and my husband were married in 2005, and if I had to describe us, I'd say we were a kooky duo. We were free-spirited goths, as contradictory as that sounds. We held core hippie beliefs, yet loved the world of the paranormal and macabre, which seemed almost taboo to us. Naturally, it came as no surprise to our friends and family when we purchased a home in Mountain, Missouri, which was converted from an old wooden church in a quiet neighborhood. The house was perfect and well in budget when we purchased it. 1 bedroom, that was on a mezzanine, looking out over the open plain. Living, dining room, small kitchen tucked further away, and a really small bell tower that had been converted into an attic. Things were odd from night one. Me and my husband, Jay, would both hear noises from the living room below the mezzanine. It would differ from quiet scuttles or whispers to creaks and screeches of furniture being moved. We both strongly believed in the paranormal and supernatural, so we both immediately jumped to it being a haunting. We shouldn't have, really, but, well, we were right. I'm gonna tell you this now, so I don't burst your bubble after you've heard what happened. Long story short, we caught some unexplained footage on film, but I can't show it to you, as the clip no longer belongs to me. I'm not gonna start beef, as it was our own fault for being foolish, but we showed it to a TV network whom expressed interest in using the footage. We got $500 for it, but didn't read the contract properly until after we signed it. We basically handed over all ownership and usage of said footage. As I'm aware, they still haven't broadcast it yet. It was supposed to be on a new paranormal case study series that hasn't been released yet. Annoying, but just another lesson learned. The footage in question happened in the wake of us setting up trail cams in the house after about a month of living there. The camera is tucked neatly under the mezzanine, and you can see the whole living and dining room. The timestamp was at 2:33 a.m., and these orbs suddenly floated directly past the camera, 5 of them in total, all ranging in size, but all emanating their own light. They disappeared off screen, and about 30 seconds later, the coffee table in the middle of the room appeared to be pulled slightly. Then it stopped. Then it was pulled harder and hit the couch. And this was a big deal for us, and during our time living there, we respected the spirits, but didn't get too close or communicate with them, in case they were demonic or evil. They stayed out of our way, and we stayed out of theirs. The haunting was mainly auditory, strange taps and clicks, disembodied footsteps, and soft tolling of bells, despite the original bell being removed. That was, until the throwing started. It started with harmless objects like tissue paper or empty cans. We would be minding our own business when one of these items would suddenly slap us on the back of the head. It was a step too far, but we both did our best to ignore it. However, it only worsened. Scissors would regularly be tossed at us, once even cutting my hand as I stuck it out to protect myself. In the kitchen, knives would regularly be thrown, damaging furniture and slicing Jay's arm. Enough was enough. We visited the local church to speak to the priest. He told us how he used to be the priest at that church before it was converted. He told us how if anyone else had said their old church house was haunted, he'd immediately dismiss it as the ground is still hollowed. However, he confessed that a 13-year-old choir boy named Charlie died 3 years ago after falling down the altar and hitting his head. He agreed to come and bless the house, and we independently burnt sage in all the rooms. The priest personally prayed for Charlie, whom he said was known for being mischievous in his life. The priest explained, perhaps in defense of the poor soul, that he was only throwing glass and knives out of frustration. The activity subsided, but never stopped, and we were constantly on edge, bracing ourselves for flying knives and other deadly projectiles. This is what ultimately led to us moving out and buying a house down the road. We still live there to this day, and still go past the old converted church regularly.
As a child, sometimes you don't understand that things shouldn't be there. That you shouldn't be seeing people in your room at night, and that things shouldn't be moved by things you are unable to see. You can really freak your parents out by saying creepy things about things or other people you have seen. Most of the time, they will dismiss it as your imagination, but sometimes they will take a second thought, because weird things may have happened to them. Because the house you were living in really was haunted. For this story, we have to go back to the early 90s and my childhood home in Portland, Oregon. We lived in a large, Victorian-style home. It had 3 floors, as well as an attic and a basement. It had a balcony on the top floor, where the attic was, and the exterior was ornately decorated and painted a haunting, dark purple. I had visitations for years that I thought were normal. The one that came the most was who I referred to as the White Man. He was an older gentleman, probably over 70, who wore a pristine white suit, sported slick back hair that had turned white with age, a colour my dad often referred to as mature blonde, and the facial hair that matched, a bushy moustache and a thin, sharp beard. The only thing he sported that wasn't white was his walking cane, a black polished stick that had a large jewel encrusted on the top. He would visit frequently, at some points in my life, almost daily. His actions would vary from shouting which no one else seemed to hear, might I add, for someone to leave his house, or get someone to stop crying, all the way to this old man pulling out a revolver and punching the air in front of him. On another side note, these visitors, they didn't look like the usual images of ghosts. They looked just like normal people, just like you or I. I feel like the White Man was an intelligent haunting, at least to some extent, and he was the only ghost I saw in the day. He would lounge in the kitchen, smoking a clay tobacco pipe, or would be stood by the oven and just stare at me. At night, my covers would sometimes be pulled, rather vigorously, off my sleeping body, and my bedroom door would slam repeatedly. I also attribute little things like keys being misplaced and such as being the work of the White Man. He was the only spirit cheeky enough to instigate such pranks. The White Man wasn't the only spirit I saw though. There was a small girl in a checkered dress who, eerily, carried a blue balloon with her at all times, though I never got a creepy vibe from her, more inquisitive. I used to think she looked like a little girl from the 50s or 60s, and when researching this house about 2 years ago, I found out a girl, about the age of the one that visited me, had died on a ride at a fun fair in 1957. Her hair had been caught in some machinery of some sort and had yanked back her head, breaking her neck from the pull and scalping her from the raw force. She lived at that old house, though the young girl I saw never had any signs of trauma. There was also a dog that I never caught doing it, but still to this day believe is responsible for leftover food going missing out of the bin, something we put down to raccoons slipping in through the cat flap. The cats never noticed the dog, if it was there. And then, finally, there was Black. Before you call me out on my lack of creativity in naming these spirits, bear in mind I gave these visitors their names when I was about 7, so if I see a man wearing a white suit, he gets called the White Man. If I see a dog, I don't know, it's just a dog. And if I see a black, shapeless shadow, I just call it Black. I think Black used to know the White Man, perhaps a brother or an associate of some kind. The White Man could be pretty scary at times, but would always back off if Black was around. I used to think, at first, that Black was a good guy, here to help me. I couldn't have been more wrong, and some people I have told about Black suggest it could have been demonic. Being a silly little child, I opened up to Black, and that's when shit really hit the fan. It started with the pressure at the end of my bed. I was on the top bunk of my bunk bed and there was no one there. My covers, though, would be super tight. Then, I'd begin waking up with red marks on my wrists and ankles that vaguely looked like handprints, but may not have been. On more than one occasion, I'd wake with deep, red scratches on my stomach, legs or back, and big bruises I had no idea how I'd got them. Black would linger in my room, almost as if he was just watching me. He was tall, and some nights we'd be face to face, and other nights he'd be way back off near my doorway. Now, Black was, as I stated earlier, just a shadow, and I never saw any distinguishing features, but I always just got the feeling that he was looking at me. My parents brushed off my stories and dismissed my bruises as being from play, though I later found out they were absolutely terrified, and the bruises were the deciding factor in us finally moving. However, all the activity seemed to cease about a month before we left, and in my honest, more mature opinion, I feel like the visitors, whether nice or nasty, gave up after they knew we were moving, as if they gave up on us because we wouldn't die there, so there was no need to try and make friends or assert authority. I know how crazy this all sounds. Believe me, I do. And I know it sounds ridiculously far-fetched, like a B-movie horror script, but if I'm honest, it did affect me growing up, and if you don't believe me, I honestly don't care. I had to live it, and there's always going to be skeptics, especially when I have no physical, definitive evidence. Hey guys, Brothers Jackson here. I really hope you enjoyed this collaboration with the amazing Killer Orange Cat. He's helped me out a load on this. I've been waiting to get this out for ages, and he has been willing to help every step of the way. Make sure you go and check him out. There will be a link to his channel in the description below. Give this video a like to show him and me some support, and go over to his channel and check out the other video which I narrate a story in. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more, guys. We can still hit this 1,000 subs milestone, even if it's after the 20th of February. I'm going to keep going for it, so share these videos. Peace out, guys. Thank you.